Margaret Burgraff, welcome back to Ireland and thank you for speaking with Irish Startup TV.
It's my pleasure to be here. I love being in Ireland.
So we're here specifically for the Silicon Valley conference. So You're based in Silicon Valley.
I am.
But you started off life in Cork.
Yes, I did.
Would you like to tell us a little bit about how you went from Cork to working with Steve Jobs and Apple?
Oh, I would love to. So I started in Apple in Cork in January of 1994. I was originally an API tester in Cork, and I remember initially when I was trying to make up my mind for my career, do I want to go deep into one technology or do I want to sort of fly over and see a lot and see things coming together? That was far more of a driver for me. So within a year or so of being at Apple in Cork, I started becoming a team lead and that sort of role. Then in '98, Steve Jobs had come back to the company. I think he probably came back in around '97, and he had streamlined the portfolio of products to a high-end desktop, a low-end desktop, a high-end laptop, and a low-end laptop. So the matrix became a lot more simplified. But Apple didn't have a whole lot of money at that point in time, and we put everything behind the original iMac.
So you're like a startup?
Yes,
yeah,
very much
very
like
cool.
it. So I was working on the original iMac. So most of the original iMac production time I was in Cork, but Steve Jobs announced this is going to be ready for the world in 90 days. USB still wasn't working. We still had some major technical difficulties to resolve. We noticed at that point in time the geographical distance between us, as we were a validation team pretty much at that point, from the engineering team became a problem. So Steve made the decision to put my entire team into a plane, fly us over. We landed at San Francisco airport, got into a minivan, drove to an Apple computer, were locked in a lab, pretty much stayed there for the next 8 weeks, fixed all the problems that had to be fixed in iMac and got it out. But for me, this was my first time being in the room with industrial designers, with mechanical engineers, with electrical engineers, with software engineers, with firmware engineers. So I was, woo! I got a front seat row to see everything about the system come together, and I knew that that's where I was meant to be.
That's amazing.
Because that project was so successful, I got shown an org chart. People dream about that possibility happening, and there was a few openings in it, and I chose to take on the management of the very first iBook. And I stayed with the iBook project its entire way through up until 2005, I think we were done with the iBook. And at that time I got promoted to run the qualification strategy from the PowerPC chips to Intel chips, which was a brain transplant in a computer. So, and I was never one to shy away from a challenge. I think that's probably the secret to my success in some ways, right? Yes, there's times I say, yes, I'll do it, and then I go home and say, right? But I've always had enough, confidence in myself to be able to reach out to other people and ask for help. And I think that's critical because, systems engineering's become so complex that no one person can do it by themselves. And this is why being part of, a community that pulls together, that you can pull together and be part of, makes magic happen.
It's amazing. And so the whole focus on product, and right now in Ireland, it could be argued we don't do a lot of product. We do a lot of services, we do a lot of marketing, we do a lot of sales. How important, so obviously from your perspective and from the Apple perspective, it's super important that the team is all in one room together.
Right.
Do you think, what can we do in Ireland to be more product focused, or should we be?
Now things have changed from those days, right? So, back to the future, I am now in Intel, and Intel is a globally distributed company. So, in fact, the smallest part of my team work in the same building and in the same state as me in California. I have bigger teams in Gdansk in Poland, I've got teams in Chicago, I've got teams in Seattle. But we've got Skype, we've got video conferencing, we've got phones, so the world seems smaller. It's much less of an issue than it was way back then when you had your pager, not a cell phone, and you'd have to go to a landline. And actually, when I immigrated out to the United States first, most Irish people already had their own cell phones because our telecommunications infrastructure was so much better. Whereas when I went to the United States, cell phones were still uncommon.
Really?
Yeah. I think that Ireland's very interesting. First of all, because the population are so young. I'm seeing a lot more entrepreneurial spirit because there was never any doubt that Irish people liked to work hard. There was never any doubt that Irish people are easy to get along with. Yes, we can be stubborn and dig our heels in if we've got a point of view, but at the end of the day, we're always focused on what needs to be done. The process of getting there, it's probably not as important as what needs to be done. But now this kind of new energy, it's been wonderful here. I mean, yesterday I got to listen to a bunch of startups pitch for funding, and I'm just blown away. It's a different Ireland. It's it's a modern Ireland, and with this referendum that just happened this week, I'm so proud of Ireland to be the first country to take a stance at a national level. It's like, go Ireland. I mean, we are a modern company that technology companies know it's essential to kind of be here. All of the big boys are here.
Yeah, and in the local area here, I gather 17 of the top 20 employers are from the US, so we're obviously attracting in the talent as well.
But it's a two-way thing,
okay,
right? Because for many, many centuries, it was a one-way thing. Irish immigrants were going over to the United States or to England because we couldn't afford to feed ourselves.
And on that note, how important do you think in your own personal career was that opportunity to go to California? Had you not gone, do you think would we be standing talking today about your successes?
You know, I like to see myself as the creator of my life. I don't get up in the morning because I didn't die the night before.
Okay.
I like to think there is an inner drive. I don't know why I'm built this way, but there's always, I mean, I'm anxious to do the next best thing. I have no doubt that I would have had a good career in Ireland too. I've seen many of my friends that are still in Ireland have had great careers. It would have been just different. I mean, you can't take two parallel lives at the same time. So I don't know what that would have looked like, but I'm a happy person. I always was a happy person, so I'm sure I'd been perfectly happy and the rain wouldn't bother me as much.
Brilliant. What advice then would you have perhaps for other young people looking at starting their careers?
I say, you know, be courageous. I think that fear is the thing that holds people back. I think be aware that you are the one that's responsible for your career. I have never seen myself as a supporting actor in the movie of somebody else's life. I've always seen myself as the main actor in the movie of my life. So there's 3 steps. There's 1, you work hard. You know, you start your job the first day that you start, you have had no time, you have no influence because you haven't done anything. You start by working hard. As you're working, you start really deciding, where is it that I want to go within the next 5 years? What different things about who I am just catches my attention? Then you start networking. Working hard alone will never get you to the top. You work hard, you start to network, and it kind of turns the curve up a little bit. Now that alone won't get you to the top either. Then you have to strategically decide who is in your network and who can work together with you in order to create even more influence and achieve your goals, whatever your goals may be. I mean, this would apply to people who want to work in soup kitchens and start working with world hunger as much as working in technology or any other industry.
It's like a global recipe for success. I really love
Well, that's what I think. I mean, for me, work hard, because if you don't work hard and you don't know what you're talking about, you have no credibility. You might get successful, but eventually that's going to trip you up. You need to, and I've always sought out mentors. And some mentors, not just the nice, friendly ones either, the ones who I think that there's something that I can learn from. So after
Super.
that, connect the dots.
On that note, Steve Jobs, I couldn't not ask you about Steve Jobs. If it wasn't for, I mean, he was an interesting character. Who was the real Steve Jobs, and how instrumental was he to where Apple is today?
You know, Steve has been quoted as to say, you know, you hire the best people and let them do the work. And actually, he did that to some degree. I mean, a lot of people think that Steve all of Apple was just Steve.
Yeah.
Steve was a phenomenal leader. Steve had a great way of setting a vision, and then we just rallied around the vision and went after it. The leader sets the tone. I mean, I am so fortunate that I not only had Steve Jobs, but today I have Brian Krzanich in Intel as well. Now, Brian and Steve are very different people, but I just love how philanthropic Brian is, and I love that he was the first one to kind of put money on the table behind the diversity thing. I love that last year he was the first one to put money on the table behind conflict minerals, and ensuring that in Intel we don't build anything with conflict minerals. And I just love about Intel that there's a really good heart behind it. Intel cares about the world. Intel does things like working with the Steve Hawking's program and working with, you know, different disabled children. And even last November, I was sent out to South Africa for 2 weeks to do some group studies with girls from 15 to 24 to try and figure out why there's a 45% gap in access to the internet between boys and girls in South Africa.
Wow.
And this is not something that Intel is doing to make a whole lot of money from. Intel is doing this because this is the right thing for the world. I mean, we cannot let the developing countries behind.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks so much for your time, Margaret.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure.
Meeting you.
Thank you.